I know that day, it already makes me like, a little bit teary, but it's like, and then you look around and you're like, well, is this it? And that's actually the goal. It's not about getting to the top of the mountain. It's about what happens along the way and who do you meet. And, someone's going to win $15,000 cash. I mean, I know that I've had multiple times in my life where manifestations occurred on a large scale, and it was bigger and better than what I had managed.
Hello, welcome back to the Shellda Podcast. My name is Dan Shelley, a professional paintball photographer. And in this episode, I sit down with the greatest paintball player of all time, Oliver Lang. This episode, we jumped right into spirituality. We talked about everything that Oliver went through in his life to become the person that he is now. We jumped into topics about hitting the mountain, achieving greatness, and then what do you do from there? This is definitely an episode that you don't want to miss. Let's jump right into it.
Photographer of the Year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast. And today I am joined by, everyone knows, some people call the greatest of all time, my childhood hero, someone who I've looked up to, Oliver. It's so good to have you on the show. And before we jump into talking about you and introducing more of it, I just want to give a quick shout out to my show sponsors. And this is the first time I've actually had a show sponsor on the show while I'm saying thank you. So thank you to Hormesis and you for sponsoring the show. It's been a dream come true. Like wearing this jacket, which we'll talk about later, has been a dream come true. And this year, I think Alex sent me the Hormesis collab you guys did with the JT Pro Flexes. And it's literally been a dream come true. Every time I see a Hormesis product, it's just like, wow, I can't believe they chose to sponsor me. So thank you. And then my second show sponsor is BFP Gear, which you know all too well. Junior and Gina Brown, you've been around them for most of your career. And obviously with Dynasty, once they came on board, they're just some of the nicest humans in the world. It's like a small family being with them and being a small business. And I just got some more lenses from them this year. So I'm excited to have like the new JT branded logo that they have to keep matching with the whole entire JT flow. So it's just been a dream come true so far doing this thing and having you on board and having BFP Gear on board. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
You deserve it, bro. You deserve every bit of it, man. You've done a lot for the sport in a very short amount of time. And I think we're all very thoroughly impressed with you, just as not only what you do, but you as a human being, the way you show up and your tact and efficacy and what you bring to the paintball world. And it's kind of amazing, actually. You really came out of nowhere. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, but you really came out of nowhere the last couple of years, and I'm sure you've got some questions about that, but it's definitely noticed, bro. So really appreciate you, and anything we can do in any way, we're here for you to support you because it's a good cause.
I that deeply hits home. Thank you for saying that. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but that's something that I've actually struggled with is receiving compliments and like receiving nice things from people. Like I'm typically the one that's like, okay, thanks, and like I push it away or I put it back on the person. So I've been working really hard on that. So thank you. Receiving your compliment and just going to be at peace with that. I do want to share two stories right off the bat before we get started here. The first one, I want to jump way back. And I believe this was, let me pull it up here. I believe, if my time is right, this is around 2006, 2007, I think. And I want to say it was in Tampa. It was my first ever national paintball event that I've ever been to, the NPPL Super 7 Days. I saw you and I was like, oh my God, that's my hero. Like, I gotta go say hi to this guy. And, true to who you are such a nice, inviting person. And it's wild that we're now weeks away that I'm gonna be back at that same exact location. And I haven't stepped foot in Tampa since that picture was taken.
Wow,
so it's just,
cool.
it's just crazy how the world kind of connects you and I, and how it connects everything together.
Totally.
Yeah.
I even have that same notebook still somewhere around here.
I wouldn't be surprised. You probably got some gold in there. And then the second story, I want to share is one from last year. So from the NXL Windy Snow, from Philly, the Mid-Atlantic Major or whatever it was. We're going throughout Sunday. I think Damage is playing in the finals. And, that's the peak of my weekend, right? Like the team's on the finals. That's where I get like those pinnacle shots of the event. And I look over, and in the middle of the pro era, you're sitting on a cooler and just by yourself, just kind of taking in the moment. And I was like, wow, this is such a cool opportunity. Like, I'm going to go sit and just chat for a little bit. I didn't take a single photo for that finals match because you and I just got so engrossed in a conversation, just taking in that moment together. Yeah. And so when I look back and I tell people about that event, it's not about what photos I took. It's actually about the conversation that you and I had.
Nice. Sorry to interrupt your photo stream.
No, you didn't. Like that's more of a core memory of that event than any photo that I would have taken. Is just the conversation and the classroom of that, right? I'm there to take a job to do a photo, and I didn't take a single photo from that. And then the defining moment was just a conversation.
It's funny how the real gold is in those moments that are not meant to be and haven't been set up and are completely obscure and off the wall from what the original intention or agenda was. And that's when you start to notice that there's a little spiritual thread that kind of guides you into something. And you're right. And it's even that for me for paintball, because, I had goals and things that I wanted to achieve. And what I walked away from it was something much bigger and much more valuable on a personal level, so going into that, it's kind of funny. It's like, it's even like a job, a job is, okay, you're going to work this, you're going to get this money, but it's like the things that are in between. It's like, the journey, what we talk about. It's like, you have to enjoy the journey. And that's actually the goal. It's not about getting to the top of the mountain. It's about what happens along the way and who do you meet and, what do you learn and, how do you grow? And, it's all these little things that you don't see because we're all, aiming towards the top of the mountain. And,
When did that switch for you? Because I feel like for a while for your career, it was very, we got to win these tournaments. We have to be the number one. And then it just seemed like that was just a complete switch.
Well, I did it all. So, it's, that song, it's one is the loneliest number. And, it's definitely isolating being in a specific level of achievement in anything that you do. And then you look around and you're like, well, is this it? And this is what I wanted. This is what, and that's why it's kind of such a funny game that we're playing, to make these goals, and then you get these goals or you succeed in these goals, and then you're kind of looking around going like, oh, I still got like another 60, 70, 80 years of living here. So what else am I going to do, And, you start to file the thing that you were aiming towards as just kind of, a little bit of a distraction to really get the growth in mind, the goodness that comes from a lot of these things, and then figure out what you can do with it and how to utilize it in a practical manner and be somewhat valuable in this society,
Yeah, that's, I just read a book that was talking about that. And I think it was called Halftime. And it talks about people who get to a point where they retire, and then you've got half of your life left. And, they talk about how you reinvent yourself. And the funny thing is most of these people who, become CEOs or move on, or in your case, number one in the world, the second you do that, what's the one question they ask you? What's next? And it's like, hold on a minute. I just spent my life doing my life work. And now I need to know what's next in that moment. It's a really interesting thought.
I think that's a falsity, because it's just like anything. Everything needs to percolate and everything needs to come up, and it takes time to see the vision. I mean, you can see the vision relatively quickly and you could maybe know what's next, but it's all processes, and it's all phases. We're all in phases of our life, and we're all in processes of our life, and some people are stuck at a very, core, basic, trying to survive level of living. And then as you, kind of climb to the top of the, Maslow's pyramid, it's like now you can self-actualize and you can actually do what you actually came to do here. But there's phases that you need to accomplish within your life to get to those next phases. And then there's more, and it kind of doesn't stop. And even if this life is just one life of 60, 70, 80, 100 years or whatever it is, that minimal time you have here, there's still something that's a continuation that goes on. And so it's kind of infinite.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I don't think I've looked at it from that level before. Hey, podcast fam, I just want to interrupt super quick and say thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast. Going on this journey has been an absolute dream come true, and I've got so many big plans for this podcast for the rest of this year. And in order to hit some of those goals, I need your help. Nearly 45% of you aren't still subscribed to my YouTube channel. So the quick, easy, and free way to show your support for this podcast is take a moment, hit that subscribe button below. Lets me know that you enjoy the content, that you're enjoying what you're seeing, and then I can keep growing the podcast. All right, let's get back to the interview. Up until recently, I've been very goal focused and I have to do this and hit this. And once I hit this, I'm going to lock something else. And I've started to journal a lot more about my experiences, and I have a separate journal that I keep just for the podcast. And so I write before it and I write after it so I can capture that journey and that essence of it. And just doing this a few months, I've already looked back and wow, I've already learned so much about myself in such a short period of time. It's such a powerful tool that I wish more people would dive into as journaling.
Yeah. Well, also just podcasting, because, you get an ability to connect with many minds and have, very high level intellectual, spiritual, conversations. And you're going to gather from that as well. I have a friend who has a podcast and he's an artist. And I mean, he interviews some of the most amazing people on the planet. And since I've known him, since he's done this podcast, he has literally risen to a level of excellence within himself that is far beyond. And I'm like, wow, it's almost like a practice, to have something like this. I mean, to be able just to have good conversation with anybody is obviously very important, but to be able to delegate an hour or 2 hours to talk about something like this, where you can really dredge, the bottom of the seafloor together and go to the highest of the highs of the cosmos together, it's valuable. Not everybody's going to give you that opportunity just in a conversation. And when you do a podcast, it's more focused, it's more intentional, and people show up for it, and they plan for it, where I wish we could just do this on a regular basis in general.
Yeah, totally. It's almost like forced is such a strong word, but it's like a forced conversation in a way. I know it's not the right word for that, but it's having a conversation. And what I've learned about this, people will say when I say, hey, I have Oliver on, I have Ryan on, they get so excited. And for me, it's a selfish thing for me. I'm coming out of these conversations and it's literally a therapy session for me. I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize I just unlocked that part of my brain, or I never thought of a topic that way. And so it's actually been very therapeutic. And just like you said, I've taken what I've learned from these conversations and I'm seeing it start to plant in different parts of my life. It's cool to see.
It's therapy. You're right. I mean, a part of the magician's journey is to do a full recapitulation of their lives. They do this in Scientology also. It's actually kind of where they hook these guys in, and they have to go, and if you've ever seen the movie, they press this recording button and they pretty much just talk about themselves and their life in a lineal order as much as they can. And something happens in this process, which is therapy. because to hear your story, to hear your traumas, to hear your victories, to hear your journey, to hear these things, them because you've lived them, but you haven't fully, completely inspected them. And that's kind of what journaling does also. Journaling will allow you to have a further introspection on processes that are coming, that have happened or that are coming. And, to journal them is also a therapy. So, because we have a vast world within us, you've got a specific amount of years, born as this person in this location by these parents with this color skin, there's all these nuances to our story. And there's a lot of things that hold you back in your story, mainly yourself. If you get to the bottom of it, really nobody else is doing anything to stop you. It's pretty much only you. And then once you can uncover these, have these tools to go in and excavate into these dark places in your life. And when I say dark, I don't mean necessarily negative, just why do you think this way? Why do you feel this way? Why is this stopping you? Why are you unable to do this? It's all made up within yourself. And then you get out of it and you get into a positive algorithm, which then allows you to really kind of do whatever you want to do in this life. Because I feel like this earth plane is really a place for us to master our energies and to do whatever the hell we want to do. And that's part of this experience, is to have experiences,
Yeah. Man, that literally hits deep, because just this week, Amanda, my wife, and I had that same conversation, and she was saying the same message that you are, that I wasn't ready to hear yet. She kept saying like, hey, you've got to look deep into some of your life and deep back into your childhood. And I wasn't in a spot, I don't think, to be ready for that classroom yet. And when my mom passed away a few years ago, it just kind of like unlocked something of, whoa, I need to like really go figure out some of my stuff. And so you're right. Even though you're going to a dark place, it doesn't mean you've had a bad life. It's just, why am I wired a certain way? Why do I make certain decisions this way? And it's really helped me tap into a different type of spirituality, I guess. And I hear you talk about that a lot, of you're tapping into that too. Where does that come from for you?
Well, real quick, I just want to go back and then I'll answer that question. I feel like that's kind of the time where you got into the scene and you became who you are, and
it was that year,
and you really showed up and you really made a name for yourself. And you even brought your beautiful wife into the scene, and you guys have a wonderful power dynamic. And it tells me that we like to, losing a family member or loved one, let alone your mom, is a very traumatizing experience. But the way that we operate as human beings, you need the psyche, the soul, whatever you want to call it. It needs a jarring to get your ass into gear, And sometimes these things, if somebody gets into a vicious car accident, they're going to come out a different person, or they get into a fist fight even, or even if I fall on the ground, and I trip and I knock myself in my head, I'm going to come out a different person. So we almost need to have these jarring, traumatic experiences to kind of step into who we're supposed to be, and they're unfortunate sometimes, but from a distant perspective, you're going to look back on it. And again, this is a hard one to say, but your mom's passing is definitely not going to be the best thing that happened to you, but it's going to be the best thing that happened to you to make you become who you are, and who you're meant to be. And honestly, it's just a part of life. I hang out with my mom as much as possible. And, I know that day, it already makes me like, a little bit teary, but it's like, these people made you, they made you. So they're very important to you. So I couldn't imagine that. Really? Yeah,
it was like such a wild, that's the only word I can come up for that experience is, up until that point in my life, like I had never really been number one in anything. I'd never, been the person. And to know that was my first ever World Cup and to partner with you guys, my dream team, the people I looked up to that she knew I looked up to, she knew all the names, and to know that the book was coming out and all that, and that she passed a few weeks before, it was just like such a wild experience to go through all of that, fly to Cup. And when you guys won, obviously I still had my mask on. I was bawling my eyes out because all that emotion just came out right there in that moment. It was such a, like you said, it was a jarring experience that kind of just snapped me into a whole different way of looking at life.
Yeah. I mean, as a competitor, as an athlete, I think we subliminally are doing these things, obviously for achievement and for, to realize goals. But
Sure.
I mean, I've really tracked to that, it's very hard for a man to cry in this era. And sports seems to be that one thing that's very allowing of us to share our emotions,
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's a build up to the World Cup, and there's a lot of story behind it, and there's a lot, but it's kind of like it goes further than just the practices and the time with the guys and getting to the point and going through the motions and beating these teams and doing it for the fans. It's like there's, emotions that are shoved back there, deep. And so winning the World Cup gives you that reason to be able to fully just let me just cry and let me shout and let me scream. And it's like the safest place to really cathart. And then you've got all your brothers around you that are, catharting with you and crying and shedding tears, and you got fans and you got, people like yourself, and we're all feeling it. And it's kind of a communal catharsis, It's like, and everybody who's rooting for specific teams, there's a buildup in that. And then it's the final, relax or the orgasm or whatever you want to call it. And
the release.
The relief. Exactly. So, but to answer your question in terms of spirituality, I mean, I think we're all very spiritual. I mean, even just tracking you, Sheldon, you're very spiritual, like you have an in-tune depth with this reality, and it's coming out in your art and your podcasts and, your dynamic with your wife, and we just aren't aware of it. And I think once you get to a certain level of material success or personal merit or accolades, you kind of you're forced to look into the spiritual, because you see that there's a vastness and there's a depth to that's far beyond the material that you've been dancing around and trying to achieve. And, it's good to do what you're doing and set goals and make achievements, no doubt.
Sure.
But once you achieve those things and you get to a certain level, you're going to have to look inside. And I think looking inside is one of the most, it's the best thing you can do, to be honest. It's just confronting. And that's why people would continuously, externalize everything and point their finger at everybody and say, well, you're the problem, and you're the problem. And instead of actually looking at themselves and saying, oh, actually, I'm the problem, and I can overcome this, and I can actually heal these things. And so then I don't see these external things that are problems. Anything that's external is kind of a illusion in a sense. Everything internal is real. And so you're able to create your reality based on how you feel and how you navigate the internal worlds. And I can tell you that as I stepped into that, my reality has got even more, I don't want to say, perfect, but it's quite a beautiful reality that I live in,
And so go
ahead. No.
Does that come from the place of you got more in touch with looking at you, not you as the problem, but hey, if there's something off here, it's maybe I'm the one that I need to focus on and not putting blame elsewhere? Is that where that's coming from?
I mean, I think that's a kind of a mundane version of it. It's more of a simplified version. It's just realizing that, you're a part of this universe. You're the same constituents that's made of all nature, and all your We don't know who we are. We don't know how we got here. We don't know what we're supposed to do. There's no real instruction manual, and it, whether you like to know it or believe it or not, a lot of us are just domesticated and running patterns and running loops and running software. Like, we're kind of a little bit of a computer, and, we're running softwares that are somewhat harmful for the hardware,
Yeah.
And if you look into any type of, types of healing modalities, you start to recognize that the unconscious is playing part and it's creating these things into your reality, and you're the one that's harboring these unconscious thoughts based on your experiences, maybe past life experiences, your personal beliefs or whatever, and then those are coming into creation, into this reality, and some of that is very terrifying and very dangerous, and people are harming themselves and harming others and harming the earth. And once you get to a certain level of recognizing that you're a participant in this experience, and you start to internalize and adjust and accept and love and care, and you become more of an acting participant in this reality, and then we can actually assist in the evolution of this reality and the evolution of consciousness. And this is essentially spirituality in a nutshell. And you have to get to a certain level of physical accomplishments. You have to get to a certain level of means, and have a house over your head, and have clothes on your back, and maybe have some egoic merit, that you've accomplished this, or you've got this name and that prestige. But that really doesn't fucking matter. At the end of the day, what that does is it allows you get to a level of true sincerity with this experience. And to me, that's really a very deep understanding of spirituality, because I know that I'm you, and I know that we're all in this together, and we're all connected by so many factors that are way beyond our computation and of our physical or our faculties of senses, so. Yeah. And again, it's a lifelong practice. It doesn't just happen. I mean, maybe instant enlightenment can happen to a certain degree, or maybe you can become like a Christed being at a certain age. But I think that's also based on past life experiences and your this current life, the kind of the ingredients that were thrown into the pot for you in this life, because some things are going to be traumatic that are going to catapult you into that. And some things are going to be almost like a beautiful experience that catapults you into that, which is kind of what happened to me. Like I just achieved a specific amount of personal success for myself, which then landed me into a place of deeper confusion in a sense, because if you just are only bound by these material experiences and notorieties and money and, a Lamborghini or whatever it is, those things aren't actually going to make you become truly aware of yourself and aware of the situation that we're all in. It's not that you're in, that we're all in. And then you can really start to tap into like deep levels of compassion and understanding and true realization, and, and then also start to manipulate this reality in a positive way. And that's kind of what I feel like I'm trying to do, is master my energies and master my mind and my inner world, so that I can create this reality in the perfect way for me and hopefully for others. And that's what I mean by saying my life and the way that I live is, in a sense, a very enlightened way of living, compared to somebody who's just arguing and hate each other and bickering and working a 9-to-5 and hates their job and doesn't have any inspiration or passion or love. And, they don't even know that they're here,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that ties in beautifully to an analogy that Amanda and I were just talking about, tying back to going through life and just not being conscious to some of the choices that you're making. We equate it to, it's like almost if you have on a pair of glasses or goggles that are fogged up and you can't see, right? But that becomes your normal. That's until right. You wipe that fog away, and then you see completely differently. And that's how I was for a long part of my life. Is you touched on it a little bit, where I was that defensive person, like in arguments, we're going back and forth and I'm already crafting how am I going to defend myself and my point instead of, well, wait a minute, let me shift that and look at what did I contribute to this that I can go learn from, heal from, and then send love back. And it's just been a night and day shift having that.
That's right. That's alchemy right there.
Yeah.
And you can learn from people, and even if they're wretched, and you don't necessarily have to. They're not going to be able to get sometimes the information or the understanding that you're trying to achieve with them in a harmonious way, so that that you can learn from each other. That's really the thing that we're all here to be doing, is learning from each other. You have a different perspective or an opinion. I don't care about necessarily your perspective and opinion. It's just that you have one, and then I can look at it and I can try to kind of understand, or at least try to understand where that's coming from and why. And then maybe if it's valuable, then I can absorb it and I can adapt with it, and then we can all kind of move on. But we're stuck in just judging each other's for their opinions and for their whatever they do and their thoughts. And it's like we get into arguments, and when you get into an argument, this with your wife, if you get into an argument and there's no resolution, then all you've done is just wasted energy and created more pain and stress. You want to get to a resolution. You want to and it might take a day or two or a week, whatever it is, but you want to grow from the experience of the argumentation and having two polar contrasting ideas of something. And you can and then say, but you both have to have the tools and the ability to say, actually, okay, I kind of can see what you're talking about. I can understand what you mean by that. But do you see what I mean by this? Yeah, actually I can. And then you can maybe come up with something that's an even better construct,
Yeah. It's like doing, I've always equated it's like doing a dance together where like you're kind of dancing around each other, but until you finally lock hands, then now you're doing that dance together to become closer during those like arguments or those spin arounds,
That's right.
Yeah. I want to go a little deeper on what you were talking about, how you went through, achieving everything that you possibly could and being at the top and then going through that confusing state. I remember that vividly. I remember it back from when PB Nation was still around and all the posts and whatnot. And there was just so much hatred thrown at you for making that decision. How did you still go through sticking through with, I believe in this. I want to step away. I want to go find this. How were you able to separate that? Because I think people in this era today, if they see that hate, they almost want to shut down and just not do it.
Well, I think hate is just such an easy thing to do and to, attach yourself to, and that's why we live kind of in this kind of a little bit of an ugly world sometimes where people just hate. And but again, you have to understand where they're coming from. So I never was personally affected by that whatsoever, because people want to see you as how they see you, of who they think you are. But if you haven't grown, man, you haven't been playing this game. If I'm still the same kid that I was 17 and I'm 42 now, and I'm still acting the same way and still doing the same thing and still playing the same thing, and maybe that's appeasing to you because you enjoy the way that I play paintball, but what you don't see is that I'm growing and I'm changing, and we all have to do this, and it's a necessity in this life. So people, there's a funny thing. If you take a bucket of crabs and you put a bunch of crabs in there, and one crab starts to climb out of the thing and he's just like about to get in there, all the other crabs will just pull him back down.
Yeah.
And it's so, you have to really fight hard in this life to become who you are, because the rest of society, the rest of the world is going to tell you, don't do it, don't go, that's a stupid idea, you're safe, you've got this job, you're really good at this, like just stay with this. And to a certain degree there's some value in that, and depends on where you are in your evolution as a soul. Sometimes that's fine. My soul's different, so I never worry. maybe there I worried a little bit. But it did mean a lot to me to have fans. Like it's just kind of a
Yeah.
crazy concept. So I think you always want to do things for the fans, even still now.
Yeah.
Um, but the difference is like whether you're my mom or whether you're my girlfriend or whether you're my best friend, like I'm gonna do me. Like, and if you can't understand that and you can't accept that, then thank you for our time together. But I've got growth and I've got things to do and I've got, experiences to experience and, I've got a lot of time still left on this life and you kind of circle back, you circle and then you circle back. And this is also kind of the pendulum swing of existence, and that's kind of, it's kind of the hero's journey, which is pretty much, the producer's secret on every movie. It's, the person goes from one place and then returns and comes back and hero and they share their wisdom from it. And I don't know if I'm necessarily there by any means yet, but I think we're all kind of on this hero's journey, and
Yeah.
our lives are different and unique. And I'm always going to do me, and I'm sorry. There's a little bit of maybe selfishness involved in that, but it's just what has to be done. And a lot of the fragmenting of those types of dynamics of fans, of teammates, of friends, of parents, of girlfriends, whatever. It's kind of the same thing like we talked about when your mom passes. It's a traumatic separation, and
Yeah.
you grow in that. And ultimately the best friends, the best people, the best fans, the best girlfriends, the best parents, they're always going to accept you. They're going to let you go and do what you need to do. They don't know what's best for you. You only know what's best for you, and you have to challenge that, and you have to challenge yourself. And again, then you become really indestructible, and you become
Yeah.
amazing and outrageous, and you can really then create and do whatever you want to do. And to me, that's like a real magician in this life, is somebody who's really just gotten to that level of understanding of themselves where they can create and do whatever. That's why I'm so impressed with some people. Sometimes I'm like, wow. I was just watching a thing about Ralph Lauren, and it's just like, I never thought about Ralph Lauren as this incredible magician, but he's a credible magician, like
Yeah.
what he's done, even now Bilzerian's in the game. And, like this guy he's like an amazing magician, they just came out of nowhere, did something that he thought he needed to do, and then mastered it and went to a high level of it and then broke apart and is speaking his opinion and doing what he needs to do and loves paintball. And it's like, whoa. To me, these are beings that are incredible on this earth.
Yeah.
We're not just sitting on the bench on the sideline telling anybody else what to do. Like if you're on the computer telling somebody else what to do, man, you're probably not really living your life. So
Yeah.
that should be an awakening for yourself right there, to go and do what you need to do in life and not harp on anybody else's choices.
Has that gotten easier for you, like later in your life? Going from Dynasty, Iron Man, stepping away, coming back, Hormesis now. Like, what have you learned through those different phases?
I mean, it's hard to pinpoint, but I do think that it gives you an immense amount of strength and power to make decisions and ride them out and succeed in them. Then it's kind of like whatever gets thrown at your way, you can handle it.
Yeah.
And there's different times. Sometimes you're going to need to handle something, and sometimes you're going to need to be in relaxation and repose. And I've kind of realized that, like, I actually think you should have multiple retirements in this lifetime. What I
Yeah.
mean by that is, like, if you're going to play a sport till, the other sports are a little bit different because you're going to walk away with probably millions of dollars. In paintball, you're not going to walk away with millions of dollars. So I have to really start to create my own. I have to figure out how to live my life and how to do things above and beyond the ability that I have. Otherwise I just get limited in that. And I've seen too many good paintball players, excellent paintball players, amazing guys who work in the warehouse somewhere now or don't even have a job and nobody even remembers their name. And it's like, and I saw that when I was even a very young kid at JT. There was guys who were superstar motocross riders who were like, all of a sudden now the forklift driver at the JT in Southern California when I went to and I was like, I don't want to be that, like, so I'm always like, and this is probably why I'm good at paintball, but I'm always very aware of the next steps and the unfoldings of what's occurring around me. And I think once you get into like a certain level of the spiritual game too, which is pretty vast, but like I see the world, like I want to understand how the world works. I want to understand why we're like this, and I never went to college and I didn't have money to go to college or to do these things. So now it's up to me to really learn and, go into these places where, are unfamiliar to me and become interested and curious in life. And when I do that, my life becomes more interesting and more amazing,
Yeah.
and I have more value to bring to people in this process. So it's really a win-win all around, but everybody will tell you not to do it.
That to me, the way I have taken that is I call that manifestation, is seeing what's in front of you and trying to visualize what those next steps are. Does that connect with you? Like, do you do that as well? Like manifesting or believe
I
in that?
mean, definitely, I believe in it. I do also think it's somewhat of a limitation also, because
Really?
because what the creator or what the universe or whatever you want to call it, magic, spirituality, what they're going to give you is always something better. So you could try to manifest something, uh,
Interesting.
and then you get delivered something even better. So did you
Wow.
manifest that? I don't know. I mean, I know that I've had multiple times in my life where manifestations occurred on a large scale,
Yeah.
and it was bigger and better than what I had managed to, what I was trying to manifest.
What you tried
Right.
to imagine. Wow.
You know,
I've never heard it that way. I've always been taught and have looked at myself as like manifesting as where you bring good in your life, but I've never heard it look at there's something even more than to what's coming from that.
well, again, this is a level of understanding your power within this thing that we're in,
Yeah.
and sometimes you're gonna be like, oh, I want to manifest a girlfriend, and you manifest a girlfriend, and maybe she's terrible or maybe she's amazing, and
Yeah.
or maybe it's I want to manifest this and something else comes. So you have to realize that, like, I think you have to learn how to get these skills and how to manipulate energy is part of an understanding of why you're here. But the
Yeah.
only way to be able to truly be able to do that is to have an immense amount of confidence within yourself, which means you have to have done something and achieved something in a specific manner of a high level of achievement so that you can have that confidence. You can have courage, or you can be brave. You could be innately born with that, or that can be superimposed to you by your caregivers.
Yeah.
But there's a certain level of truly achieving something that allows you to have an immense amount of confidence. And once you have that immense amount of confidence, then you feel willingly and deservable about whatever else comes to you in this reality. And then you can start to create it. There's practicalities to it. Like it could be, oh, I want to manifest a fruit right now, and my neighbor comes in and gives me a fruit. That's more of a magical act. But if I'm like, oh, I want to build a second story to my house, well, I've got to make that money, and then I've got to get the designers, and I've got to get the vision, and then I build it. So there's different levels to it. And to be honest, everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
It's just, are you aware of it again, and what are you doing it in a beneficial way, or are you doing it in a very negative way? I bet a lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of the negative things in their life that are occurring on a regular basis are them doing it to themselves.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. I think so many of us aren't even aware of it. In where I noticed that, I think it was sometime last year I went through, the social media detox, right? Where like you put it away for a little bit. And what I noticed is I took Instagram and I took it off my phone, or and without even knowing it subconsciously, I watched it happen. My hand would unlock my phone and go to tap right where it was. And so you just get so ingrained in doing something that it just becomes unconscious to you. You're not even aware of it.
Well, that's the thing is a low level of assault on the human consciousness is distraction. So once you can achieve the ability to have focus and not be distracted, none of these things are bad. It's just the way that you approach them, and
Hmm.
how you manage them. Because distraction is everywhere. I mean, every day, all day.
Yeah.
So just how much focus you want to have into something. And I do think that there's a level of manifestation congruent to kind of what I was talking before with focused attention, spiritual practices, affirmations, visualizations, breathing, pranayam, uh, yoga, these types of things. These things will help you create a healthy manifestation practice.
Thank you for sharing that. You're unlocking so much in my brain, your brain for this so far. I do want to go back and talk about your mom. I know how important she is to you, and it's been such an incredible experience when you're at events and she's there with you. Like, I will just watch her from afar, and she is just a beam of energy. She's smiling, and people are coming up to her and sharing stories about you, and you could just see how much that means to her. Tell me what it's been like having her now being your travel companion, around the world with you.
Again, man, it's like I would have never have been able to build the connection that I have with my mom if I was still playing the sport. In the last 6 years, we've hung out multiple months at a time, 3 months, 2 months. This time she's here for 4 months, so we've really, I think we've really obtained a level of very congenial and healthy mother-son dynamic. We have an immense friendship and bond and appreciation for each other and adoration for each other. And it's very important to do that with your parents. I mean, look, you might have difficult parents and it might be hard to do that with, I understand. But it is a mutual, thing. So they have to work hard on it and you have to work hard on it too, but you can't just blow your parents away because they're difficult. They're all difficult. My mom still got her complexities sometimes too.
Sure.
And, but the difference is we've really grown into a healthy dynamic where really she's kind of my best friend. And it's kind of also hard to have other friends, especially female friends sometimes, because she's just so cool and so understanding, and we can discuss so many things. And, the way that our dynamic is, if I don't message her or if I can't meet, there's never any like, oh gosh, I'm so disappointed in you. There's no guilt and there's no shame, and there's just fully acceptance and appreciation for the time and the moments that we have for each other. And, I'm forever grateful for her. Even again, like you said, or like we said earlier, she brought me into this world, without my mom, I'm not existent,
Yeah.
And luckily I have a very, interesting mom, an interesting father also, that to me is very inspiring. I want to be an interesting person. I don't know if I'm going to have kids, but I'd like to be an interesting person for other people, at least nephews and nieces and friends and, such like this. It's to me, it's a very important thing where I feel like now modern day times, just I'm pretty not disinterested with a lot of people. And that's just because people aren't doing interesting things and they think in a very limited mindset, so that's kind of my goal and my blessing of having my mom and still learning from her and still having a friendship with her and hanging out with her every day. Is again, I couldn't have done that in America the way that it was doing, the way it was going down. And to me, it's very important, and a lot of these other guys, they make new families, they get a new wife and they make a kid and they've got to focus on that. But I do think that the parental dynamic is really an important one to heal and understand and resolve and solve and enjoy.
Have you and your mom always been close, or was there sort of like this unlocking in the past 2 years of a mutual, hey, I want a deeper relationship with you and her back to you?
We've always been close, but again, when it's like paintball was just so like
narrow, yeah.
And I just didn't have time for her, to be honest. And it wasn't important, and even when my dad passed away, like I was in France at a tournament and I went and saw him because I knew he was getting sick. So I said, okay, let's make this trip, so that kind of gave me an ability to go see him. But like, I loved my dad. I had a great relationship with my dad. My dad supported me. He was a wonderful man and beautiful man. And, but like when I was in my, 16 to like 26 or 28, like the world didn't exist to me. It was just paintball, and it was beautiful. I wouldn't change it for anything, but then 28 started to happen and I started to kind of open my blinders a little bit and I started to see things, and I had already accomplished everything and more times 10x of what I kind of set out to do. So it was kind of like, well, look, there's a lot to this life. There's a lot more going on here, and I'm a person who likes to take advantage of these types of internal visions and insights that I have. I don't just shove them down and block them and do what other people tell me. It's just not in my character. That's also why I think I play paintball well, is I'm going to do me. And if you can play with me and you can play off of me, I'm going to work with you also. I am a team player. But if you try to make me only do this one position, you're limiting the possibilities of my, what I can create on the field. And so, there are players that just need to do that, and they're a role player, and they're very important, and they're also very important to the system and the society that the way that it works. And I'm just not that person. And so the last couple years, I don't think there was a conscious decision with me and my mom saying, let's build a better relationship. It just happened naturally. And again, I'm that type of person where I love natural. I love things to happen naturally. It's not about forcing them or saying, okay, I'm going to go do this now. It just kind of comes and
organically.
It hits, and, I'm trying to really track my paintball journey it's like, I kind of made it happen. But it was never a task. It was never hard. It was never sacrifice. It was never any of these things that everybody tells you they have to do. It was just me doing it because I love to do it, and taking me on this wild ride because I appreciated it and I loved it so much, and I was willing to put into the time and energy into it. And then that to me is the perfect dynamic. It's not like I want to be sacrificing and toiling and grinding and being at the field every day and hating it every moment. It's like, no, it's just full grace, man. It's like just floating and just doing it and just playing. And that's how I play also. And I think a lot of people don't do that anymore. They play with a very mental mind struct, and give or take, that could be bad or good for them. It depends,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you see it so often and I think maybe it's part of society today where like people show up to the field and I am this, I'm a one, I'm a snake player, I'm a Dorito player. And it's like, you hear it and it's so limiting. Like you're only looking, if we relate it to what you're talking about, you're only looking at the world from one perspective. You're not being open to looking at it from something completely different. And maybe that unlocks something and changes something in you.
You have to get to that being that proficient one to then recognize that you can do other things, because it's all degrees of confidence that are occurring, And traditionally, that's how it used to work. You'd be the one, and then you'd move to the two, and then you'd move to the three, and then pretty much you're done. Your career is finished after that, and that's like 10-year process or maybe 12-year process. And now it's, there's just not, and straight up, there's just no kids that are taking anybody's spots anymore, and that was not my generation of the game. We were like, oh, you're an old guy. I mean, we're going to outwork you. We're going to have more fun. We're going to play more creatively and more dynamically, and we're going to fucking take your spot, old man. Sorry.
Yeah.
And, nobody does that on Dynasty, and that's why they're still doing it, and that's why they can still do it. And, to be honest, I think there's a lot of fault in the system right now with no kids that are really figuring out how to cut their teeth to really do it or enjoy it to a certain degree, where they're really just moving people out of the way and taking spots.
Yeah, it's almost like, and I don't want to say nobody because that's so definitive, but majority of people don't want it so bad that they're just envisioning it and what do I need to do to get there, and I'm not going to let anybody stop in my way of doing that. Like I don't hear that anymore.
Yeah, and I think that it might be a generational thing. I mean, again, the world's just changing so rapidly, and it's becoming very soft in so many ways. But like even when I was a kid, I just roamed the streets. I don't know if kids can roam the streets now, that everything's got to, be home at this time, and, you got a cell phone, and, don't take the bus, and, it's a different world. So I think you need to be a little bit gritty as a kid, and if you're gritty as a kid, then you turn into, kind of an evolved, wiser person, because you've gone through and you've had situations that were, potentially dangerous and difficult, and you've had to navigate through them and manage them. And, hopefully you come out on top.
You learn from your knockdowns, right? And like if you get knocked down, you learn something from it and you come back stronger.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I want to dive into All That Matters. I got a preview of it last year at some point. I think it was maybe Chicago. And when I watched you, the dynamic that you and Alex went back and forth talking about that little bit with the interviews, I lost it. Like I resonated so much with your story. Growing up, I didn't really have, my dad wasn't really in my life. And so like to hear that dance that you guys went back and forth and hear about Alex's journey, I just like, I wish I could have just given you a hug in that moment because like I genuinely felt that connection with you. What has that experience been like going through that whole process with All That Matters?
Well, I mean, to be honest, again, if you talk about manifestation, it's a perfect manifestation because I didn't really do anything for All That Matters. It was like a quick conversation with Alex about a concept. Alex kind of really, he's a very passionate, very driven artist. And, we happened to get Miko on board right at that point also. And, he'd been preparing himself for this project as well for a long time without even knowing it. So that's also the funny thing about manifestation is just like the things are occurring and people are aligning and things are getting set into place for when it needs to happen. And that was all that matters really for me. I mean, I really just said, okay, and trusted in the process, and Miko and Philip and, some of these other guys really captured it. And, Alex helped kind of, curate it. And, we got the right music with Dan, who's doing our Iron Kids documentary, which that one is going to be a more depth storyline about really the internal workings of all of our dynamics, because again, man, everybody's got them. The beautiful thing is you start to see the result of them through the team dynasty, and the Iron Kids is the precursor to that, so
Yeah.
And I think that one's going to be a lot more emotional because there's a lot more characters involved in that. And kind of like what you said in the beginning of the podcast, it's like, the stories of these individuals are really what captivates people. And I feel like the Iron Kids one's going to do that. All That Matters did that with, the players that are there. And yeah, it was a great, I think All That Matters is going to be a great prelude to the Iron Kids documentary. I think All That Matters is going to make you want to play paintball, which was kind of the intention that Alex had for the video. And it definitely made me want to play paintball. After I watched it, I was jacked. I was like, I want to play paintball right now. And, I think the characters that are in there are great characters. Tyler, amazing characters. We need to learn more about him. Mouse, amazing character. The whole Yakima dynamic, their whole family story is just beautiful. I didn't even really think that mine was going to be so much in that one, to be honest. It just kind of happened. And again, manifestation, I didn't really do much. I got to tip my hat to Nico and Alex for really making that happen. And capturing it, and and I get some executive producer credits on that, but for the most part, that's their brainchild. And that's kind of Hormesis in general. It's like really just me and Alex's art project. That was the initial flag in the stand. That's what we wanted to do. That was our whole mission. Our whole goal was to really make art together and utilize our paintball influence to allow that to happen. And that's really actually what's happening. And that's why I think we're definitely by far the coolest brand in paintball now. And that has been probably for a long time, since maybe JT or maybe the original Die, where it's a team of ex-retired players or current players as Alex, and, making products for the players, by the players. We really care about the players. Every time you buy a Hormesis anything, it really goes back into the sport. It's not like we're sitting here getting fat off of it. Well, I'm a little fat, but I'm just eating well. But it's not like I'm buying a Lamborghini or anything like that. We're really dumping as much as we can back into the industry for the industry, because we love the industry and we love the players, and we see what we can do, and we see that that's been the error that has happened in the past, where people get blinded by the money, and then they stop caring about the industry that's been supporting them, and so
Yeah.
that's why I don't shop at any place that doesn't care about me. That's my rule. I'm not going to shop. I don't shop at McDonald's or anything like that. These people only care about making money. you know
Mhm.
uh, I put my money, I vote with my money. I go to, farmers markets and small grocers. And, I mean, luckily I've got Hormesis now, but it's like I only buy
Yeah.
brands that matter and that care about me. And, to me, that's a much more holistic approach to this material society. If you don't care about me, then, you know, then you're not doing anything progressive for the whole humanity. Then I'm not going to put my money there, and we can
Yeah.
easily stop spending our money in these places that just don't care about us, and put our
Yeah.
money into local and into places that matter. And that's really the point of this whole rant, is like, Hormesis is for the people, by the people. I don't even care about making millions of dollars on it. I want to build a brand that I can create leagues with, that I can stimulate players, that I can create it new um, formats, that I can create videos, that we can create. You know, we've done a lot in magazines. It's like we're trying to make this sport as cool as we know it is,
Yep.
with the help and assistance from the people that support us. And that's why I ask for support. And then we can support people like you. We can support other people who want to do this stuff, because we're all about that. That's our whole point. That's our whole mission.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've resonated so much with Hormesis, with you and Alex, is it's passion first. Like I think you said it a lot. Like some of these giants in the sport, they'll go from it is passion first, but then at some point it switches to money first, and then it just everything switches about that business and that person. And it's been well documented on this podcast. From the moment I thought about doing this and I announced it, I literally got a call from Alex like within that first day. And was like, "Hey, what can I do to support you? What do you need?" And it's like, wow, I would have never expected that from somebody. And so it just goes to show how much you and Alex care about just paintball and the people in it, and where we need to take this to the next level. And I think it's been well documented with everything that you've done. The one versus one series last year and the whole tour. I looked at that as, in other industries like the Steve Jobs of the world, the Elon Musk, the Bill Gates, and all of that, like they come up with ideas that people look at them like, you're crazy. That's never going to work. And it does. And that changes things, and that changes it. And you guys did that.
Yeah, we're doing that. I mean, this whole one-on-one thing, I'm very passionate about. Like, this is my next level of mastery within the sport. And you're right. People are looking at it like, no, it's a team sport. It's not one-on-one. But I'm like, no, if we want to get this thing into the place that we know that it could get to, it's going to be through one-on-one. It's going to be through the duel, through the elite one-on-one. And, it's been an upward hill battle, and we've spent a lot of money trying to get it to that place. And I'm still determined, and I'm ready to bootstrap more and buckle up and do what needs to get done. And, it's these things it's a process again.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. That's been, when I first heard you guys talk about it, I was like, oh, it seems like a cool concept. Like I'm excited for it. But until I was actually there in person and I experienced it, and I experienced, I think what we're lacking right now in the world, and what we're going to continue to lack, is community. Like it just brought together so many people in that one day. And like you said, you now have a bond for life with these people. And that to me was the unlocking for where I think that's really going to help grow, is that communal piece of it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because what I noticed, even being, multiple, years in the pro scene, it's like, you know, yeah, okay, cool, you're infamous or you're, you know, heat or whatever, and maybe I like you and maybe I say hi to you for a second or something, you know. But really, it's kind of like, nah, you know, I'm against you. This is my
Mhm.
team. We've got to beat you. And you know, on on a very basic level, like it's this team against this team. Or when you go to, you know, the paintball fit that you guys play at, it's like, you know, this team versus this team, and you got to practice them, and we're better than them. And what I like about the one on one, it's kind of like if you watch the Olympics. I come from a skateboarding background, so I watched the Olympics, the skateboarding, and which I thought was just an amazing addition to the Olympics. Really, I did.
Yeah.
And what you see is this really interesting camaraderie between the top level players.
Yeah.
They're literally rooting that other skater on to do the best trick that he could do, or have the best sequence of tricks, and they're like pounding their board on the ramps, and they're like, yeah, do it, yeah, and then they do it,
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas in, like, when, you know, okay, Paintball Fit won the World Cup, and you know, I think we're all pretty impressed by them. Um, but then there's always that little bit of you, which I think is different. Like if Dynasty wins, it's kind of like, oh fuck, Dynasty wins again, or
Yeah.
this other team wins. Whereas in its one on one, it's kind of like all of a sudden now we're in this neutral playing field where it's really just let the best guy win, and oh, that guy's playing amazing. Let me support that guy. And I've always been an individual fan of people, so
Yeah.
I like the way individuals, um, you know, assert themselves or what they do or their style, and that could be in other sports, you know, even football or whatever. There's specific guys that I like, and I guess we kind of have that in paintball also. But when you go into the one-on-one field, it's kind of like everybody's cool with each other. And you might not be battled up against this guy, and you might have to, you know, figure out, okay, I'm going up against this guy and I've got to watch him and I've got to train harder than him. But for the most part, there's kind of a universal appreciation for everybody, you know. And
Yeah.
then with Joust is a whole nother one where literally, you know, it's just so much fun, and everybody can bond and everybody can network, and the community aspect of that is really just unparalleled. It's really a powerful um, uh, format for that, for networking and building community and building rapport and making friends and potentially other teammates, and you know, supporting each other. And then it could trickle into the duel where, you know,
They both.
all of a
Yeah.
sudden now I'm on your team, you're on the Glorious, or I'm on the Magnificent, and it's like, oh well, let me support you because you're in the duel tomorrow, or maybe I'm you know, there's so many ways of networking with each other. And I just think that the one-on-one simplifies a lot of things. It really, if there's errors in the sport, if paintball is broken and it needs to be fixed, the one-on-one actually fixes almost every, if not if not 90% of them, 100% of them. Or sorry, if not 100%, 90% of it. You know, it's easier to understand, right? It's much clearer of understanding who's playing who and who
Yeah.
wins, right? It's cleaner, it's cheaper, it's easier to film. You know, there's so many factors that come into play that I think is going to be the future of the game, and I'm standing behind that statement because I'm going to be the one that's ushering it in, and I need people to buy in and believe in this thing with me and see the value of it, and not that it's going to take away from anything else. In fact, it's only going to improve everything else.
Yeah.
You know, if a kid comes to the paintball field with his mom and he wants to actually start to get serious into this thing, you know, it really takes a lot of convincing with that dynamic to be able to have the mom support this. And where does the kid go? What's the team that he's going to play on? You know, is he going to even be invited on a team for a year or 2 years of showing up to the field? And how much energy and paint and time and money is going to be poured into that before he either gets burned out and walks away with a bitter taste in his mouth, although he loves the sport, or maybe he can just jump right into the one-on-one and start to advance his skills instantly and make a name for himself within a small amount of time and
Mhm.
become pretty reputable in the local area. And
Yeah.
then instantly now, hey, why don't you come play on our 5-man team or our 3-man team or our 10-man team? Hey, you know, you're a good player. I can see that you're a good player because you're winning these one-on-ones. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's an easy inch into the bigger format of the game. And a lot of people, especially myself, even I took it for granted a lot because I got to play paintball pretty much for free for my whole life. I mean, there was a couple years where I was paying, but I got onto a pro team at a young age, and then I got free guns, free paint, free travel. A lot of people don't do that, and a lot of people are spending a lot of money, their hard-earned money that they're working for 9 to 5, 5 days a week, 6 days a week sometimes, and all of a sudden they're doing this for 10 years and they're kind of like, whoa, where's this going and what's this getting me? It's not really getting me anywhere. But one-on-one, you could go into that and all of a sudden instantly have a type of credit. You'd be accredited for your skills in a very short amount of time, and possibly rewarded. I could be paying these guys a significant amount of money for each one-on-one that they win. Like this year when we do the grand finale in May, someone's gonna win $15,000 cash. I mean, that's pretty good
that's life-changing for people.
It's life-changing. I mean, when Tommy Greenleaf won it a couple years ago, he's like a 21-year-old kid and he got $10,000 cash. I never had $10,000 when I was 21 or 20.
Yeah, it's life-changing, and I think you hit the nail on the head with where paintball needs to go, and it's life advice, right? Like if something is hard and it's not working, focus and simplify. Take things away, break it down to its form, and then build it up. And so I think you're spot on. Like in order for it to grow, we've got to simplify it to exactly what you're doing.
Exactly. And what we've done is simplified it to the perfect amount where it's a tennis court size field, 16 bunkers, the best bunkers. We're not utilizing all these ugly shapes that are hard to play. And it's very easy to have anybody come out at any level of the game and understand what's going on. Like instant, that's a breakthrough,
Yeah.
And again, everybody's like, no, this is stupid. This is not it. It's a team sport. And man, it's just like, okay, now I have to prove it to you that this is going to be the future of the game. And, who else better to do it than me? But I will say that, it is challenging because you'd think at this point, people would be like, okay, yeah, I trust in what he's doing and I'm going to support that,
Yeah, that's fascinating.
I can't even get a call with the NXL, it's like, what the F, So it's interesting how, people get stuck in their ways and their mindset and, and I get it.
It comes back to that crab analogy that you said earlier. Like you're trying to get out of the bucket and like people are pulling you back down and bringing you back down to it, trying to at least.
That's right.
So we got to get you out of that bucket. I've got a few more questions that I want to dive into Hormesis a little bit. I don't think up until Hormesis, I don't think I've ever owned anything in my life that has been handmade from like a clothing perspective, and that didn't really click with me until maybe this year. Like when you helped me with doing all the headbands for the Dynasty Children's book. Even then, I didn't realize like, wow, these are all being handmade, and it's just something clicked, and my appreciation for clothing, my appreciation for the brand, my appreciation for like the jacket, the headbands just went to a whole nother level. And I don't think players really appreciate that like everything that they're wearing on their heads from the Hormesis headbands are handmade and they're going through a painstaking process.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
It's a part of the journey also is to, they call the archetype the lover. There's the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And so the lover is the one that, you kind of is, they don't say that there's a chronological order to any of them, but in kind of my personal experience, I think we're all kind of the warrior. And then you go to heavy battle and you're in the trenches and that could be metaphysical or that could be, in real life. And you kind of come out and you have a different appreciation for life. And, you start to look and appreciate beauty and the wonderment that's all around you. And, the phenomenon nature that's, blooming and growing around you effortlessly. And, it just takes a certain subtlety in that switch, which kind of sounds like you had, where you start to appreciate things more. And in the world that we live in, where we want everything fast and cheap, you're not really going to get anything quality fast and cheap.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer of uh, quality over quantity. And when certain people can appreciate that, which people have in the hormesis world, in the paintball world, which has kind of been their introduction to the lover. Certain people love certain materials now and appreciate the
Yeah.
artisan aspect of the brand. And you know fashion is a very convoluted, kind of somewhat destructive industry
Yeah.
in this modern day times, where everything is fast fashion and truly made in not very nice working circumstances, and being underpaid. And the reality is, the majority of your clothes and majority of things that even are around you now, your electronics and things, that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
And then there's certain people that are abiding to kind of a more holistic approach. This is kind of like what hormesis is. And it's an old method of creating the motif, the batik, kind of dying here, because again, everybody wants something fast and cheap, and they don't want to
Yeah.
spend $100 for a shirt. And so they create the motif with a machine, and they print it, and then they sew it in a sweatshop. And the reality is that that's just not very advantageous to the system that we're in. So if we can change it a little bit, then that's kind of, again, part of my dharma, and kind of part of my art project with Alex in this. And
Yeah.
people have noticed it, and it's gone a long way with the headbands, and it's still just the beginning. And I mean, I've got two stores down here in Bali that I'm running and operating every day, that are people are coming in and buying hormesis every day. And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a paintball brand here, it's more of a Bali brand. And we're making with high quality materials, bamboo, linen, cotton, and silk. And then we're batiking it, and then we naturally dye it, which is also just a phenomenon that nobody's doing anymore. And
Yeah.
all the dyes come from plants. Excuse me. And the reality is that if you go and Google you know blue jean lakes or blue jean rivers, like, these dyes are literally polluting thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of of rivers, and the fish are
Yeah.
dying, and the people can't eat out of them or fish out of them or swim in them. And it's just toxic. So we're pretty naive in America, in a sense. And that's also why I think it's really important to travel and see the world. But
Totally.
we don't really see, we don't know where the food comes onto our plate.
Yeah.
We don't know where our clothes come from. We don't know anything. And then we have such an opinion about everything. And why is this so expensive? And so the reality is, if you care, you don't mind to spend a little bit more money for where it's coming from. And in
Yeah.
fact, probably a better solution. And I'm the same way. Like, I spend a lot of money on things that are quality. And
Yeah.
if it's junk, I just don't buy it. And to me, it's all about quality. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like a super expensive, watch that's made like that, but it's like carvings and paintings, and there's certain things that you can have around your house, or the clothes that you wear. Um, this is kind of, I think, an important direction that we go into in the future, is more craftsmanship. I like to see all the players in the hormesis, or the people in the hormesis community, who are like artisans. Some of them are blowing glass, and some of them are quilt
It's
makers, and some
wild.
some of them are sewing, resewing, repurposing hormesis bands, and creating product. And
Yeah.
it's like, to me, like, that's really cool. And let's support the people. And even like the the boom of headbands after we started to do it, there's all these headband brands now, but they're all just cool people doing it, and they're all little
Yeah.
home, mom and pop, or a boyfriend girlfriend dynamic. And to me, that's super cool. Like, power to the
Yeah.
people, and that's what I'm about. And it's like, that's really the essence of hormesis in terms of the product building. Like, I don't want to be huge. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to be like a Stussy, or like a like a yeah, even Ralph Lauren, you know, but it's like, I want to have, you know, I want to grow, I want to be bigger than what I am now, but it's still grassroots, you know, and it's still for the person who's a connoisseur of something and appreciates something and can feel the difference when you have it, you know, and that's one thing that I think that the Hormesis headbands have is when you feel a Hormesis headband and you open the box, it's not like anything else. It's not like any of these other brands. It doesn't feel like it's made in a factory. It's got a different energy to it, and it's palpable. And I think people recognize that. And they are a collector's piece. And I won't make them forever, so they will continuously have some type of progressive investment. And we're gonna go move more into clothes. I mean, I only wear natural fibers now. I only wear linens and bamboos and cottons, and I only natural dye. I mean, I can't even wear anything else, to be honest.
Synthetic, yeah.
So yeah, you know, it also changes my whole personal effect. It makes me feel even closer to this reality, you know, through this. And then I can wear something like you're wearing that beautiful jacket, you know. It's like people are gonna talk to you about it. It's not just a regular denim jacket. It's going to be something that could potentially create a conversation and a dynamic, or maybe a new friendship or a new partnership or whatever it is. So you have to see these things as much more valuable than the mundane object that they are, you know, and that's kind of, you know, the essence of the Hormesis headbands where it started. It was the whole concept with the headband, especially when we played, is it was a power item, you know. The headband is you know, just like in karate or any of these more other martial arts, you know, even jiu-jitsu, you have to have the gi, and these things are things that help you create the outcome that you're trying to achieve, and they have a subliminal effect on your progressive nature to achieve it, you know.
Totally.
And it maybe it sounds superficial and maybe a little bit material in a sense, but we are believers, you know, human beings. We need to believe in something, and that helps us, you know, move forward in life. And if it's as nuanced as a headband and you put that on and you wear it and you can stylize yourself and have a little bit of individuality on a team, and you can maybe even, you know, point yourself out in a team photo or something because you see what your headband looks like, it makes a difference, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've said it in the podcast a few times over the past few weeks. If I leave my home and if there's one item I forget in my gear bag, I will turn around if I forget my headband. Like, I don't care. I'll get stuff from other people, but like, if I don't have my headband, I will turn around and go get it. That's how much it means.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like such an inanimate object that means so much. It's kind of like I'm with you. Like, you can't really play paintball without a headband, although it's not the gun or the goggles or the loader or the paint. It's like kind of up there with that stuff as much as possible, if not more important sometimes, you know?
Yeah. And you were talking about how Hormesis is now shifting into the clothing brand, and that's honestly one of my favorite accounts to follow is the Hormesis attire. Like, I love when you're posting like the new clothing that's coming out in the shops and just the customers that you have in there. It's so cool to see people that are just not in paintball or maybe not familiar with it going into that brand and showing genuine excitement from that. It's been so cool to see you transcend that journey. I don't know if I told you about this off air or not. This jacket has a lot of meaning for me, and like, it's completely unlocked my life. So I think I've shared it in a few episodes before, but up until this, I was the person who would wear like a black t-shirt, white t-shirt, like not very flashy at all. So for me, this is like, whoa, it's a huge statement. And I wanted it. I was so excited to get it. But then when I got it, I'm like, man, I can't wear this out. Like, I'm going to get judged. People are going to look at me and like, what is that crazy jacket this guy's wearing? And I felt my confidence just plummet. And then, you know, with conversations with Amanda and like talking about where that comes from, I was like, you know what? I'm going to wear it to work. And I work in an office setting. People are pretty conservative with what they wear. And I'm walking down the hall. I'm looking like, all right, who's going to say something? Like, no one's looking at me. Right. I get to my desk, coworker pops over and she's like, "Hey, that's a pretty cool jacket. Like, what's the story with that?" And it just, in that moment, like, wow. And I got to explain the whole thing of like Hormesis and how it's handmade. And Roman, at the office in California, he sent it to me and he wrote a whole beautiful message of, "I picked the colors out for you because it represents the clouds and the dirt, and you're in the dirt taking pictures like up in the clouds." And so it just had a whole nother meaning to me. And just like it completely unlocked my life.
Totally beautiful. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
So thank you.
Yeah, well, that's again, man. You're starting to explore the realm of the lover, because the warrior, he doesn't want flashy anything. He's trying to survive. He's trying to get the hunt. He
Yeah.
needs to be in incognito in a sense, and it's only until you can get to a certain level of appreciation where you can recognize how damn beautiful you are. And Dan, you're really a beautiful man. And
Appreciate
clothes
that.
are a sense of, you know I love this one guy, Young Trumpa. He's one of my spiritual teachers, and he was a monk, and he moved to England in the 60s or something, and he was wearing monk's clothes, and obviously he was being looked at as different, and he realized that if he wanted to really make an impression on the Western world, he needed to not separate himself from them. So he denounced his robes, which is like kind of you don't ever do as a monk. And he
Yeah.
started wearing suits, and he started wearing really gorgeous suits, and putting the lapel, and
Wow.
it's really an amazing individual, Young Trumpa. And his whole thing is that what you wear is your suit of arms in the modern day society, and it's a coat of armor. And if you're only wearing a black shirt, well, you're going to kind of only be surfing in that region. Right now, if you put on a suit or a collared shirt or a jacket like that, now you get that interaction with that person, you get that story, you build that rapport, you build that bond. This is how you're being shown into this reality, is
Yeah.
what you. And it's not, and I don't want to make it sound superficial, like it's all about what you wear, because it's not. It is who you are. But these are the elements that allow that interaction to occur, and that's really what we're kind of striving for in life, is this interaction, this fellowship, these bonds, these friendships, these communities, these interactions with people, and the learning from them, and sharing with them or teaching them, whatever it is. And I've noticed that too, because a lot of men are they're very bound in their fashion world, and that does actually say a lot about their personalities, in who inside they really are. Because I do notice this as a firsthand experience, that I don't really ever feel bad in my life, but I've had a few days where I felt a little off, and I noticed I went into my closet and I went for the black shirt, or the very inconspicuous item that no one's going to notice me, right?
Yeah.
Right. But now when I put on a flashy shirt, well, it's impossible for no one to not notice you, especially if you're walking into a restaurant or to an office building where it's,
Yeah.
pretty drab. Now everybody's gonna be like, whoa. And that's how I feel. I want to come into this world. I want to add color. I want to add cheer. I want to add brightness. I want to add an energy. I want to turn up the volume of beauty, and everywhere, in every circumstance, and every interaction that I come into, whether that's a flash in the pan purchase at a convenience store, like that's still an opportunity to impress somebody, or have somebody impress you and share something with you, or laugh, like, to me, that's really what an angel is somebody who
Yeah.
just brings in a radiant positivity into any situation, and can boost. It's like, we live in this world where it's a little muted. It's kind of like on the old television channels or TVs, where you can turn up the brightness, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa.
Whoa.
I want to be that character in everybody's life, and I like and appreciate those characters in my life. They're the people who
Yeah.
bring me the most joy.
Yeah.
And there's people who work on a subtle level, and they can wear like a black shirt, and
Sure.
you can still do that. The difference is it's, you have to, again, it's all about awareness, and it's recognizing, if I do this, I might not have this interaction or this experience, and if I do this, I'm probably going to have this interaction in this experience, and now if you're
Yeah.
trying too hard is another story, but if it's genuine, which I feel like I only wear nice shirts. I won't even leave the house in a t-shirt,
Mhm.
because this is how I'm delivering myself to this reality. And I want interaction. I want to meet people. I want to network. I want to build community. I want to be friends. I want to laugh. I want to share stories. To me, this is very healthy. you know,
Yeah.
it's very healthy. I don't want to only just wait for a paintball tournament to have a bunch of friends around me. I want to be able to walk down the street and have everybody around me know who I am and I know who they are, and we laugh and wave, and I can help them and they can help me. To me, that's a beautiful society.
I mean, that right there is unlocking the goal for, I think, what every paintball player strives for is how can you have that feeling at a paintball tournament and replicate it in between those 4 or 5 events of the year. And like, that's exactly it.
That's right.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Cause yeah, it literally, I think I can say it, like it changed my life in that moment, and it became a part of my identity now. And it wouldn't have happened without you guys, making that. So thank you.
Well, you got to love these kind of guys like Roman too, who can write that and craft that up and, see that. I mean, that's a skill. That's an art. It's the same thing. Like when you come into the Hormesis shop, like, this shirt might not work for you, but okay, this one actually really aligns with you, and it's got this symbol and it's got this color and it's got this material, and it's a whole alchemy that can actually really, influence your current state, and
Yeah.
we're living in current states all the time, and most people are living in a little bit of a turmoil state, and sometimes a nice shirt just or a nice something, a nice bunch, looking at flowers can make you just feel better, and and
Yeah.
it's not lame, it's not pussy, it's not gay, it's actually really important to do these things, and to not be afraid of being seen in this reality and showing yourself, because you have a lot to offer,
Yeah.
and as you are doing that, Dan, you're offering a lot, and look at the response that's coming from it. This, if you ask me, is spirituality. The more you can offer, the more assistance you can be to people, the more available, more open, willing, vulnerable, tender.
Yeah.
This is really, again, it's kind of a back-ended concept, but that's really what a warrior is. A warrior isn't about killing and murdering and marauding everybody and being the hero. I mean, that hero is another different archetype, but the warrior is really about being available to this reality and being vulnerable and tender and open and willing.
Yeah, that's a new concept for me, and so I think after this, I really want to dig into reading about the warrior and the lover and understand that, because I don't think I've ever really heard that until this. I thank you for explaining that and breaking that tip for me.
Yeah, there's a book by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, the King Warrior Magician Lover.
Okay,
So much.
I'm adding it right after this. Speaking of books, I wanted to ask you. I don't know if you've ever read this or not, but this is something that's been really impactful for my life. It's a book that's called the Four Agreements. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, Don Miguel Ruiz. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a must read. Also, yeah, it's kind of an introductory book that if anybody's kind of starting to question things and get curious and things, that I recommend that book.
Yeah, I read it a few years ago for the first time, and I just like it didn't really hit. Maybe parts of it did, but then I read it a few weeks ago, and it was a complete awakening. Like the first agreement, be impeccable with your words. It was just wow. Like I just thought about how important language is, and it's important of how I'm saying these words to people and what they mean, and I think it's one of those books where this is going to be on my shelf for the rest of my life, and every few years I'm going to read it, and like it's going to mean something different throughout my life.
Yeah, and you got to apply them. Read the first page of that book. It talks about the warrior. This is Toltec wisdom, and Toltec wisdom is some of my favorite. Hard to find these days, but the very first page, it's like a little paragraph.
So if this is what you're talking about, it says, to the circle of fire, those who have gone before, those who are present, and those who have yet to come. That page?
Can you just show it to me real quick? I think that's it. What's the... No, there's another one right after that.
Let's see. There's an acknowledgments page. And then there's like, this is the very first page or chapter of it.
Yeah, that's it. That's the first page. Yeah, read that page.
So thousands of years ago, the Toltec were known throughout southern Mexico as women and men of knowledge. Anthropologists have spoken of the Toltec as a nation or race, but in fact, they were scientists and artists who formed a society to explore and conserve the spiritual knowledge and practice of ancient ones. They came together as masters and students. The ancient city of pyramids outside Mexico City, known as the place where man becomes God.
Yeah, and does it talk about the mitote? Does it say something on that? Maybe there's one more page on that.
Mitote
talks about the sleep that we're all in. Well, anyways, it's a good book, and I recommend it as well for anybody.
Yeah, I don't see that here, but that just means I have to go back and read it now because it's going to mean something different after this conversation.
Yeah. Well, the mitote is the fog, is what they call it, and it's kind of like what you were talking about, dressing a certain way, internally conflicted, not really awakened, not really alive to this reality, and kind of essentially just blocking the light from yourself, or being in a fog, being distracted, being confused, being judgmental. This is what most people are operating in, and so anybody, if you've got judgment and self-loathing and all these things, you're living in the mitote, which is the fog, and you need to clear the fog, and you need to see the light, and it's not just a Christian concept. It's a kind of universal concept to be awakened and to be reborn and to be alive and in touch with this reality, and that's what the Toltecs are teaching. And Don Miguel Ruiz is a master. The other ones that are really far out, that are really good, that are kind of next level, that I even can't fully comprehend, is anything Carlos Castaneda. Fantastic books. I mean, really high level knowledge, written in a very interesting way. But the Toltec is very hard information to find. There's another woman, Suzanne something or other. She has written a few Toltec books, but it's a very beautiful system of pretty much, becoming awakened and becoming a god.
It really is. And the cool experience that I had this second time around is Amanda and I read it together. And so we both had different parts of that were resonating with us that we got to share back and forth. And so that was a really cool experience. That could be something that you and maybe you and your mom read together and see where you take away from it at different points.
Good point. Good idea.
Yeah. I've got two more questions for you. One, I've been ending all of my shows with a pretty cool way to tie the community together. And what I've done is I've allowed the guest to ask a question for next week's guest without knowing who it is. And so it's been a really cool way to tie in that community. And I've had questions from all over the place. Sal Chavez of BFP Gear asked, is cereal a super chowder? Ryan Gray asked a really deep question about some passed away loved ones. This question, though, this comes from last week's guest. I had on recently, changing and evolving into his next chapter. And when I told him, he didn't know at the time when we were on air, and I said, hey, I'll tell you who it is after. And he was like, oh, I can't wait for Oliver to answer this. So this question is, it's a little long one. If you have a choice when you die for people to know that you played paintball and leave a legacy, essentially know that you're the greatest of all time, or when you die, no one gets to know any of those accomplishments, which one would you choose? So essentially, people get to know about your success that has become you and your identity, or would you want your legacy to be something completely different?
And he knew that this was for me?
He did not. But when I told him who it was after, I was like, wow, talk about the worlds aligning.
Yeah, that's a form of manifestation. No, I definitely want everybody to know about my legacy, because I think we need to inspire each other, So, I mean, I'll be gone and I won't remember anything and I will forget it. But, hopefully the story is strong enough for, somebody to awaken for themselves and, become the greatest in the world. And maybe that's enough and what they need, I mean, everybody needs trailblazers, So I like to look at myself as a trailblazer. And I feel like my legacy is yet to even totally happen yet. I feel like I'm still in an age of, I feel like it's coming to an age of becoming again. It's been a lot of relaxation and repose and, personal self-inquiry.
Yeah.
And, but definitely I want to leave a mark in that sense. And I feel like not a mark, but like hey, this guy did it. Why can't I? So, I definitely want that information to be eternal,
That's been, that's hit home for me recently, is really focusing on like my legacy and what I want my legacy to be. And I've started to like kind of work backwards of I can control that now. And like what I'm doing every day is going to be my legacy. And so I'm right there with you with that.
Nice. So what's your legacy?
My legacy, what I want to do is I want to bring vulnerability out in people, especially like in this small community of paintball. I think we struggle with that quite a bit, as I don't see a lot of vulnerability around anybody in the sport. And when I bring guests on, like what you and I did, I want to go deeper. I don't want to talk about paintball. I don't want to talk about the field. I want to talk about the human side. I want that rawness to come out. I want people to share feelings. And in order to do that, I need to be the one that creates that atmosphere for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, you should definitely start to expand your horizons into, psychology and psychiatry. And, because this is essentially, like you said in the beginning, this is a form of therapy,
Yeah.
So if you're able to ask the right questions and we're able to go deep into those places, then I get a healing, you get a healing, and anybody who else listens gets a healing, hopefully.
Yeah. And so you just touched on something that's really important. I've had so many people reach out to me either publicly, through like commenting on these videos, or privately saying how these conversations have helped them in some way. And that is exactly why I do this. Is it's something has connected with somebody, or they heard somebody that said something that they've looked up to, and it's helped them grow as an individual. And so that's the legacy I want to live, is how can I do that on a much broader scale?
Cool, bro.
Yeah.
I love that. It's a good one. Well, I'm rooting for you, and
I appreciate that.
I know you can do it. And if you need any help, and I'm curious to see how it unfolds, because it's probably the next thing after a podcast,
Yeah, that's it. That's something I've actually struggled with that in the past few weeks, is, coming on the scene super quick and like essentially hitting the pinnacle of paintball photography. Like I can't do much more. Like I already got the award. There's not much more after that. So I did kind of like, well, what's next? What do I do now?
Yeah. Well, you should get into personal coaching or personal development or NLP, these types of things. And, it's pretty much all personal development, even when you're coaching others and speaking, learning to speak. And, there's just such a vast depth of possibilities, so
Yeah.
welcome to you,
Yeah. I appreciate the advice. I do want to put you on the spot. This is something that I've thought about for a long time. You can say yes, you can say no. Feelings won't be hurt. I have never I can't say never. Maybe one or two times in my life I've had somebody that I've looked to as a mentor, but I've never had an official mentor in my life. If you're open to that in some capacity, like I would love to have some type of mentorship with you where it's a monthly email, we jump on a call, whatever it is. I feel like I could learn so much from you as I'm starting to just tap into that spirituality a little bit.
Yeah. Mentorships very, very, very important. I've searched the globe for mentors, and they're hard to find, especially in specific areas. I mean, it's pretty easy to get a coaching mentor, but really the mentor dynamic and the student dynamic is really important. I'm open to that. I'm currently not really practicing that, and there's a lot of, because again, I'm still in process. Yeah, so there's specific things that I can articulate and help you with, but there's also a certain level of personal practicality or personal practice that I need to be embodying to be able to transpose a specific amount of mentorship, and currently I'm just not really in that phase, but I would love to have more conversation with you on maybe like a friendly level.
That's
And then
exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah.
we could build into that. I wouldn't really title it as mentor kind of dynamic, but I would say, friendly conversation, and we can go into depths and we can ask questions and we can, kind of navigate some terrain. Then that's definitely available for.
Yeah. So thank you for reshaping that. I think a friendship might be a better way to call that, less official, right? Is just things like today where, going through like, hey, I had this scenario or I had this situation, and just to get your view on something, I think would help unlock a different way for me to see just a different situation, which I then would continue to snowball into my journey as I grow.
Totally. And I think that you should actively pursue mentorship and coaches, and people who are of high level of something that you're interested in, because there's a lot of value in all of that. I've probably had like 5 probably really solid mentors that are in a big, gap age difference of my life, 20, 30 years difference. And, they've definitely tremendously helped me out a lot. But the unfortunate reality of like a true mentor kind of disciple dynamic is, you need to really be spending time together on a regular basis. That's when you get the most, they get the most out of it. A call here and there helps, but it's, but yeah, anyways, I would suggest actively seeking that out in terms of, you could find a mentor that's an expert at podcasting and, enter a type of dynamic with him. And it's specific on what you want to really try to do and understand with mentorship, because there's certain mentors that can give you this, and certain mentors that can give you that. Certain mentors, it's not all, it's not a silver bullet that can kind of capture all of them. I mean, I gravitated towards it. I mean, like, Shane was kind of my first mentor, and he was a master of the game at that time. And he had a heart of gold and an ability to really, see the game and inspire people to a way that I wanted to do also. So, I took on tutelage from him in a kind of a non-official way, and that's also, you can also do that. And then, mentors change, specific mentors for specific things at specific times. And then, it's like, for instance, Don Miguel Ruiz, like you can enter mentorships with guys like this, and, it might not be one-on-one right away. It might be a group call, but you do this. I have guys that I do this with still.
Yeah, I mean, you're as long as you're still around that pocket of community, you're still getting something from that.
No doubt, it's part of it. You have to do that,
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Of course.
You now get to ask a question for my next week's guest without knowing who it is.
All right. So the question is, if you could restart your life right now, and not remember anything that you did in your past, and money was not an option, and you could do something, what would it be? Full-heartedly.
Wow. That's beautiful. I love that. I think knowing who the potential next week guest is, it's gonna make them think a little bit. So awesome. Oliver.
When we make people think.
Yeah, I do too. I love it. Like I love the really in-depth questions, something that they never would have thought of until that moment. It's cool to be a part of that journey when they go through that. So, well, Oliver, thank you so much again for doing this and taking time out of your day. This truly means so much to me. And if I could go back to that picture when I told that young kid, hey, 20 years from now, you're going to be on a podcast with this person I just met, I would be over the moon.
I remember we had like correspondence also, like we were talking on Facebook or MySpace or like email or something.
Yeah, there was.
I remember you as a kid also.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. When
you came back, I remembered who you were, but you had turned into a more grown adult.
Yeah, I think we had corresponded. I think you're right. At some point, it was Facebook. At some point, we exchanged emails back and forth throughout the years. Yeah. So it's cool to see like just the different connection points throughout our journey together.
Totally. And I think that's a mile marker for anybody out there, I mean, look, yeah. I mean, it's not, you don't want to be annoying, but people are pretty much available if you approach them in the right way. And you're not the only one that happened to, the only difference is we have this now, and then I definitely had people that were annoying, that
Sure.
were like, calling your phone at odd hours at night, and it's like there's tactfulness around it. But what I'm saying is that if you're a young kid and you are interested in becoming a professional paintball player or becoming a photographer or podcaster or whatever, there's people that are available. You have to just go and suss them out and connect with them and be of some type of beneficial quality to them, whether that's just a nice conversation or a nice gesture, or maybe you buy them dinner or lunch or something, and they've got information for you, and you'll never know what it turns out to be, like we're doing now.
Yeah, it's so cool. So you're right. Like anyone out there, if you've got someone that you look up to, send them a message, send them a DM, find their email, and you'll never know what that relationship will turn into 5, 10, 20 years down the road. So
I'm 16 hours ahead of time, so don't call me at an off time.
Yeah, good. Well, word to the wise there. Awesome. Well, Oliver, this has been such a beautiful journey, and thank you again. And to the rest of you out there watching and listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.